Part 1. The man they found inside the closet started crying when he saw my son. Not because he was scared, not because he was confused, because he recognized him. My son was 8 years old, the man looked almost 50, and somehow, he knew exactly who Owen was. It started at 2:13 in the morning. My wife woke me up and whispered, "Listen." At first I heard nothing, then it came. Breathing, slow, human, coming from inside our bedroom closet. We listened for almost a minute. Neither of us moved. The breathing never stopped. That's when Allison called 911. 20 minutes later, 3 officers were standing in our bedroom. One of them put his ear against the closet door, then immediately stepped back. Because he heard it too, breathing. Right on the other side, the officers opened the door and found a man sitting inside, alive, gray-haired, thin, exhausted, like he'd spent years running from something. The officers pulled him out, asked his name. No answer. Asked where he lived. No answer. Asked how he got inside. Nothing. Then Owen appeared in the hallway, half asleep, holding his stuffed dinosaur. The moment the man saw him, he froze. For several seconds, he just stared. Then tears filled his eyes. Real tears, the kind you can't fake. One officer pointed at Owen. "Do you know this child?" The man nodded, very slowly, then said, "I remember him." The officer frowned. "From where?" The man looked directly at Owen, then whispered, "From later." Nobody knew what that meant. The paramedics took him away before sunrise. By morning, the story was all over the neighborhood. A stranger found inside a closet. No identification, no fingerprints, no record of him existing anywhere. The police couldn't figure out who he was. Neither could the hospital. It was like he'd appeared out of thin air. That night we visited him, mostly because I wanted answers. The old man barely acknowledged me, barely looked at Allison, but every few seconds, his eyes drifted back to Owen, like he couldn't stop checking if he was still there. Eventually he asked Owen a question, a strange one. "Do you still draw rockets?" Owen frowned. "What?" "Rockets." The old man smiled sadly. "The fins are still wrong, aren't they?" The smile vanished from my face, because Owen drew rockets constantly, and he always drew the fins wrong, always. The old man looked at me, then at Owen, then quietly said, "You never listened when Dad showed you." A chill ran through my body, because I'd spent years correcting those drawings. Years, and somehow. This stranger knew that. The room felt different after that, smaller, less safe. I finally asked the question everyone was thinking. "Who are you?" The old man looked away. No answer. I asked again, still nothing. Then Owen spoke. For the first time. "Do I know you?" The old man's eyes immediately filled with tears, again. He looked like he was trying not to cry, trying and failing. Finally he whispered, "No." A pause then, "But I know you." Nobody spoke after that. The visit ended soon after. On the drive home, nobody said much. Then Owen suddenly looked up from the back seat. "Daisy." I checked the mirror. "What?" "Daisy." "Who's Daisy?" Owen shrugged. "I don't know." Then he looked out the window. "She was a good dog, though." My hands tightened around the steering wheel. We had never owned a dog. Never. That night I couldn't sleep. The next morning I went back to the hospital alone. The old man was sitting by the window, waiting, almost like he knew I'd come. I closed the door, pulled up a chair, and asked him directly, "Who's Daisy?" For the first time. He looked genuinely surprised. Then he smiled, not happily, sadly, like someone remembering something they'd lost. A golden retriever. My stomach tightened, because that's exactly what I expected him to say. I don't know why. I just did. The old man stared out the window, then quietly added, "She hated thunderstorms." I felt cold, very cold, because when Owen was 3 years old, he used to tell us about an imaginary dog, a golden retriever, afraid of storms. We'd completely forgotten about it, until now. I leaned forward. "Who are you?" The old man ignored the question. Instead, he asked one of his own, a question that made my blood run cold. "Has he mentioned the lake yet?" I stared at him. "What lake?" The old man's face immediately changed. Every bit of color drained from it. Fear. Pure fear. The kind that appears before bad news. Very bad news. Then he looked down at his hands and whispered something so quietly I almost missed it. "He remembers sooner every time. He remembers sooner every time." I stared at the old man. What does that mean? He didn't answer. No explanation, no warning, nothing, just silence. The hospital ended the visit a few minutes later, and I left with more questions than answers. That night, Owen asked me something strange. We were eating dinner when he suddenly said, "Dad?" "Yeah?" "Have we ever been to a lake?" I nearly dropped my fork. "No." Owen frowned, then looked confused. "That's weird." "Why?" A pause, then I thought I remembered one. The next morning, Allison found him drawing. Not rockets this time. A lake, a wooden dock, a yellow kayak, and a golden retriever. At the bottom of the page, he had written, Daisy. Neither of us told him that name. Not once. That afternoon, I drove back to the hospital. The old man was waiting, again, like he always knew when I was coming. I put Owen's drawing on the table. The old man stared at it, then closed his eyes. For a moment, he looked exhausted, not physically, emotionally. "That's the lake." I felt cold. "What lake?" The old man opened his eyes, and for the first time, he looked afraid. "The one where I died." Silence. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because it was insane. "You died?" The old man nodded. "When I was 12. I stared at him. "You're sitting right here." A weak smile appeared. "I know." That answer bothered me more than anything else, because it sounded genuine. Not crazy, not confused, genuine. Before I could ask another question, my phone rang. Allison. The moment I answered, I knew something was wrong. "Mark." Her voice was shaking. "What happened?" "It's Owen." My stomach dropped. "What about him?" A pause. Then, he knew. I ran. The entire drive home. One thought kept repeating in my head. He knew what? When I arrived, Allison was standing outside, white as a ghost. She handed me a piece of paper. A school permission slip, field trip, scheduled for next month. Destination, Lake Redstone. The exact lake from Owen's drawing. The exact lake the old man had mentioned. The exact lake nobody had ever told Owen about. I looked at Allison. Neither of us spoke, because we were both thinking the same thing. How? That night, Owen couldn't sleep. Around midnight, he walked into our bedroom. "Dad?" "Yeah?" The boy hesitated. He then asked, "What's Route 33? I frowned. "What? Route 33? Where did you hear that?" Owen looked confused. "I don't know." Then he added, "You shouldn't drive there tomorrow." Every hair on my arm stood up. "Why?" A pause. Then, "Because that's where the truck hits you." The room went silent. Allison slowly sat up. Neither of us knew what to say. Eventually, I forced a laugh. "Bad dream?" Owen shrugged. "Maybe." Then he went back to bed. Neither of us slept after that. The next morning, I almost stayed home. Almost. But fear sounds ridiculous in daylight. By noon, I felt stupid. By 3 o'clock, I felt embarrassed. And by 5, I was in a ditch beside Route 33. My truck had been hit by a yellow pickup. Exactly where Owen said it would happen. Exactly. I wasn't seriously injured, just shaken. But as I sat there waiting for the police, I couldn't stop thinking about one thing. The color. Yellow. Because Owen had said, "Run the truck." Not a truck. Like he already knew which one. That night I returned to the hospital. The old man saw my face and immediately knew. "You took Route 33. Not a question. A statement." I sat down, slowly, then asked, "Who are you?" The old man looked away. For several seconds he said nothing. Then he whispered, "That's the wrong question." A pause. "The right question is..." His eyes found mine. "But why is he remembering?" I felt cold. "What is he remembering?" The old man's face went pale. The kind of pale that comes before panic. Then he whispered, "My life. My life." The words didn't make sense. I stared at the old man. He stared back, then looked away, like he already regretted saying it. I leaned forward. "What does that mean?" A long silence. Finally, he asked, "Has Owen started remembering things that haven't happened yet?" I didn't answer, because he already knew. The lake, Route 33, Daisy. Every one of them had been real. Every one of them had come from somewhere. The old man closed his eyes, then quietly said, "It started the same way for me." For the first time, I noticed something strange. He never said Owen, he always said me. Not him, me. That should have been impossible, but somehow, it wasn't. The next few weeks got worse, much worse. Owen began knowing things he shouldn't know. Small things at first, then bigger things. One morning he looked at Allison and said, "Mom, don't buy the blue one." "What?" "The toaster." Allison laughed, because we didn't need a toaster. 3 days later, ours broke. She went shopping, found 2 identical models, one silver, one blue. She bought the silver one. 2 weeks later, the store recalled the blue model for an electrical fault. Nobody laughed after that. One night, Owen woke up crying, not scared, heartbroken, the kind of crying that comes after losing someone. Allison held him, asked what was wrong. Owen could barely speak. Then finally whispered, "I miss Daisy." The room went silent, because Daisy didn't exist. Not yet, maybe not ever. And somehow, Owen missed her, like he had already spent years with her. The next hospital visit was different. The old man looked weaker, more tired, like something was running out. I sat down, and before I could speak, he asked, "How old is he now?" 8. The old man nodded slowly, then smiled, a sad smile. I was 8 when I met him too. A chill ran through me. I already knew who he meant. The old man continued. At first I thought he was lying. "Who?" The smile disappeared. The old man. Neither of us spoke, because we both understood. The old man he met was him. The room suddenly felt colder, smaller, wrong. I looked at him, really looked at him. The shape of his eyes, the way he tilted his head, the way he rubbed his thumb against his palm when he was nervous. I had seen Owen do all of those things, hundreds of times, maybe thousands. The old man noticed and looked away. He didn't want me comparing them, because he knew what I would see, the same person, just decades apart. My phone rang, a detective. His voice sounded strange, tense, excited, afraid. We got the DNA results. My stomach dropped. The old man closed his eyes like he'd been expecting that sentence. The detective continued. We ran the test again. A pause. Then again. Another pause. Then again. I couldn't breathe. "Just tell me." Silence. Then, "We've never seen anything like this." I looked at the old man. The old man looked at the floor. Neither of us moved. The detective finally said, "The man isn't related to Owen." My heart skipped. For 1 second, I actually felt relief. Then the detective continued, and everything changed. "The man is Owen." The room went completely silent. No sound, no movement, nothing. The detective kept talking, explaining percentages, genetics, lab verification. None of it mattered because I couldn't hear him anymore. I was staring at the old man. And for the first time, he looked directly at me. Tears filled his eyes, not because he'd been caught, not because he'd been exposed, because he was sorry. Very sorry. Then he quietly asked, "Has he mentioned the door yet?" I felt cold. "What door?" The old man's face went white, exactly the way it had when I mentioned the lake, exactly the way it had when I mentioned Route 33. He stared at me, terrified. Then whispered, "Oh God." My stomach dropped. "What?" The old man's voice cracked, because for the first time since we'd met him, he looked genuinely afraid. Not for himself, for Owen. Then he whispered, "He remembers even earlier this time. He remembers even earlier this time." I stared at him. "What does that mean?" For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "It means I never got this far." A chill ran through my body. "What are you talking about?" The old man swallowed slowly, like every word hurt. "When I was 8, a pause. I remembered Daisy." Another pause. "At 9, I remembered the lake." He looked down. "At 12, I remembered drowning." The room went silent. Then he said the sentence that scared me more than anything else. "I didn't remember the door until I was 34. I felt my stomach tighten. "The door?" The old man nodded, then looked at me, terrified. "Owen already knows about it." That night we brought Owen home. Neither Allison nor I said much. We didn't know what to say. How do you tell your child that an older version of himself is sitting in a hospital? You don't. You pretend everything is normal, even when it isn't, especially when it isn't. When we got home, Owen was unusually quiet. No questions, no complaints, no drawings, just silence. Then right before bed, he looked at me and asked, "Dad? Yeah? Do you know what's behind it?" I felt cold immediately. "Behind what?" Owen looked confused, like the answer should have been obvious. "The door." My heart stopped. I hadn't told him. Neither had Allison. Neither had the police. Nobody had mentioned a door. Not once. I forced a smile. "What door?" Owen pointed toward the hallway, toward his bedroom, then quietly said, "The one that isn't there yet." That night, neither Allison nor I slept. At 3:12 in the morning, we heard Owen's bedroom door open, then footsteps. Slow, calm, deliberate. We ran into the hallway. Owen was awake, walking toward the stairs. His eyes were open, but something felt wrong. Very wrong, like he was following directions only he could hear. "Owen." No response. "Owen." Nothing. He walked downstairs across the living room, then stopped in front of the coat closet near the front door. A closet we barely used. He reached for the handle. I grabbed him, hard. The moment I pulled him away, he blinked, looked around, confused. "Dad?" My entire body was shaking. "What were you doing?" Owen frowned, then answered, "I thought it was open." The next morning, the hospital called. The old man was gone. No security footage, no alarms, no witnesses. One moment he was in his room. The next, empty bed, empty chair, gone. The police searched for weeks. Nothing, no trace. It was as if he had vanished. 3 months later, Owen stopped talking about Daisy, stopped talking about the lake, stopped talking about the door, Slowly, life became normal again, or at least normal enough. Years passed, then more years. The strange memories disappeared, the fear faded. Eventually, Owen turned 18, then 21, then 25, and for a while, I convinced myself we had escaped it. I was wrong. The call came on a Tuesday. A detective from Columbus, retired now. Older, his voice trembling. He said only one sentence, then everything came back. They found him. My stomach dropped. Who? A pause. Then, the old man. I drove there the next morning. The address was unfamiliar, a small house outside the city. The new owners had reported breathing inside a closet. The same story, the exact same story. The police opened the door and found a man inside, alive, gray-haired, exhausted, terrified, waiting. I already knew who it was before I arrived, because deep down, I had always known. The detective handed me a photograph, crime scene evidence. I stared at it for a long time. The man inside the closet was older now, much older, but it was still him, still Owen. Then I noticed something. The photograph hadn't captured only the closet. Part of the bedroom was visible, including a mirror. And inside the mirror, there was a reflection, a child, 8 years old, holding a stuffed dinosaur, watching the closet door, watching Owen, watching himself. I couldn't breathe. The detective frowned. What is it? I turned the photograph over. There was writing on the back. Only 4 words. 4 words written in Owen's handwriting. This was the first time. I stared at the sentence, then looked back at the photograph. And that's when I saw it. A detail nobody else had noticed. Far behind the child, far behind the old man, deep inside the reflection, there was another figure, older, much older, standing in the darkness, watching both of them, waiting. The detective asked, "What does it mean?" I looked at the photograph one last time, at the child, at the old man, at the figure behind them. Then I finally understood. The old man had never been trying to stop it, because he couldn't. None of them could. Not the child, not the old man, not the one standing in the dark. They were all waiting for the same thing, the next time. I handed the photograph back and walked away. The detective called after me, "Where are you going?" I stopped, but I didn't turn around, because for the first time in 20 years, I knew exactly where Owen would be. Then I answered, quietly, almost to myself, "He's already looking for the closet."